and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast where we talk about some Dungeons & Dragons and discuss how we might include them in our role-playing campaigns. And we're back after a very long travel. We're back. We've got our bags up and packed. I don't know about yourself, Hamilton.
I'm still in just piles on the floor. That's
are you still living out of your suitcase, even though?
Yeah, of course I am. Yeah.
You been all right, though? Any RPG stuff happening with you?
No, well, I was actually earlier today recording, I think, so I've been doing this new series called How to Roleplay Warhammer Using Different Systems. So I did one starting off, obviously, with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. And then I did the second one, which was about Morkborg, obviously, because that's the second most closest and dearest to my heart. And as I was going through it, I realized I was very passionate about it, because I just realized whilst doing it that there's no going back, Fiona.
Yeah.
Once you've tried it and you realize like how adaptable it is and how like open-ended and how it doesn't get in the way. It never gets in the way of whatever you do. Because we played our Mordheim game on Tuesday night, and I was struggling because I couldn't find what I do when someone goes unconscious. Like, how do I... It says you go unconscious when you hit this level. I'm like, okay. On top of after like figuring out that when you fall, it's 1d10 plus 3 for every yard. And you're like, okay, how many yards is it? What's a yard? You know, like it's basically a meter. And then on top of that, you have to then like, you realize they've gone unconscious. And then it's like, okay, there's another page 3 pages later, which then explains to you. And you're just like, and then it's an extended heal check on top of a normal heal check and then a toughness check. And you're just like...
It's tricky because I've been going through my Too Long Didn't Read streams as well, and I'm finding like because I love learning about new mechanics and stuff like that. But if presented with like a 400-page document, it doesn't to me, and it's not easy to understand what the mechanics are straight away. Then it's so off-putting that I'm not going to read the rest of it. Like the lore could be amazing, the setting could be amazing, but if the system is not simple enough to get someone in and then build a topic, because that's what I do like the Wolfrup something of like, here's what you start with and then you build up from that. But I do think the structure of that book is not well organized at all. And
it does just get crunchier and crunchier as you move through, because it's like it's deceptively simple in the D100 system. But what hits you is like when you make an attack, right? We're just about to enter some proper combat now, which we're going to really get into it. You're going to roll. You roll to see if you hit, then you flip your roll to see where you hit them. And that's dependent of like how much damage you do, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like, what is this game?
It sounds cool, but then you like, I need to be seeing examples of it. You know, like so I did a stream on reading through the quick start for Call of Cthulhu, because I ran a quick game for some friends here. I'm trying to make friends and not scare them, and they were like, we want to do something that's not D&D. And they were like, oh, let's do Call of Cthulhu, and they really loved it, and it's great. And I think the base system it's the same system. It's D100 equal to or below your base value is a success. Anything, half, a fifth, etc. So great. And then you get to combat, and no joke, even in the Keeper's Handbook and all that sort of thing, there is a flow diagram, because that is how complicated combat is, that even in the book it's not that well explained. I think what I've discovered doing these streams for me is that I'm like, oh, this is not accessible to, you need to do it for someone who's literally trying to find a system for the first time. It doesn't matter if they're a veteran, it doesn't matter if they're new to role-playing games. It's more like, can they read this book in 20 minutes, get a grasp of it, and then go and run a game? Or be like, oh, that sounds really interesting, I want to read more about it. Because it's about gripping people. I think game design has come along a long way since then. But it's fascinating how different publishers will do different things. And I'm like, oh, this is not, how do people play this game? And it's like, oh, we just dealt with it for so long. And you're like,
It's the wildest thing about it. And it's very easy to do that. You realize this, I do it all the time when I'm trying to explain something that I know really well. You're going to miss out key logical steps that other people want in order to understand what you're trying to get across. And when it gets super complicated, like combat mechanics in many games, you're just like, I'm sure you know what you're talking about. I'm sure it makes sense to you, Mr. and Mrs. Writer, or, but to me, I'm lost halfway back in this page, and I don't quite know what you're getting at. So it's, that's the thing. And so when I was looking back at Morkborg, I'm just like, you want to bring corruption mechanics in? Easy. You can just steal them. You just go, it's toughness or presence. You roll. If you miss the DR12, you gained it. If you're ill, you're ill. If you're out, you're out. It's all those things. Really, I don't know. It just seems ridiculous.
It's one of those things. Like, because I've really enjoyed what we've done so far with More Time and like you said, the Wolf System. But as soon as you see a book that's that thick and it's not necessarily easily searchable, it's a certain layout as well. There's all these things. And one thing I was going to bring up is that what I quite like about what we're talking about today is that something that Wizards are starting to do with all their books is that giving a little teaser of stuff that's not necessarily in the upcoming adventure stuff like that. But it's like, if you enjoyed this, we've got a whole book which is different from it, because we've had this before. So today we're looking at two things, actually. We're looking at the Vecna Dossier, which is no longer available on D&D Beyond. We'll come back to that in a second. And then we've got the other adventure, the Nest of the Eldritch Eye, which is like the intro adventure. Set the characters up to go into the Eve of Ruin adventure module that has just come out, which we'll cover at a later point.
Yeah.
And one thing I really love about particularly these sort of like little free things, because they're free on D&D Beyond. You can't get a physical print of them. And I know people are like, I don't want to have a D&D Beyond account. I think because everything is going into like that centralization of like everything's going to be on D&D Beyond eventually. They're not going to put them out on Drive-Thru-RPG or anything like that. But it's just, I feel like these little things get you excited. It's just extra content. It reminds me of, and I know this means no sense to you per se, but like I've been rewatching Doctor Who, right? And the earlier seasons, they had something called TARDISodes, which is not a great name, but it's like little mini episodes or little mini things in between episodes to like excite people. Like, oh, you watch this week, and then we can find out more. But you don't need them at all. And what was nice is that they're literally like 5 minutes long, and they don't necessarily include characters from the episodes. It just builds up the world. So stuff like this, it just is a way to be like, here's a free thing. Did you like it? We've got a big book coming in, so there's more of this stuff on the way. And I think it's a marketing thing, but it's also incredibly accessible for people who, say, for example, have no bloody clue who Vecna is. You know.
Well, that's the thing, and that's another thing. Like circling, I know we're going back to Morkborg. One of the criteria I'm using to like score these things is the accessibility. And they have a free version of their whole rule book, which is more accessible by the fact that it's like written for accessibility as well, in the sense that it is done just in the black and white, no like art, no colors, no crazy graphics. It's just text only, very simply and easily legible and formatted. And you're just like, who else is doing that? I mean, these are a close approximation to that of like, hey, you don't want to go spending 30 quid on something you don't know, because if you've come to this like in the past 5 years, you might have watched Critical Role, so you might have understood what's going on there and seen Vecna in that, or you've watched Stranger Things and you've seen it in there, which is maybe why you're like, oh, that's interesting, but let's learn some more before I drop 30 quid on a book or something like that, or more.
Try before you buy is exactly what you're sort of saying. The reason that I think it's different, because this is a full new adventure, The Nest of the Eldritch Eye, compared to the previous free stuff we've got, which has usually been like a free chapter of like The Radiant Citadel, Prisoner 13 from the Golden Vault, etc.
The Mortuary for Planescape, which I think was really good, because that was, as you said, completely additional and a really great way of being like, hey, you think this is cool? This is really, because it was a really cool, like, oh, I want more of this. Well, yeah, I will drop now 60 quid for that whole set. But
that was different, because so this is the thing I was going to talk about, was that all these things that we mentioned, so the Mortuary is a really good example, because that's not an adventure in itself. That was just some extra bits put into the, like, I felt that was like, oh, we can't fit this in the main Turn of Fortune's wheel, so we'll put that out, but we keep it as a separate thing. The Big Beast Giants one, that had like, here is an example of an adventure we have made from all the random tables that you can have. So that was demonstrating these books. I wonder, and I'm sure you'll tell me otherwise what you think, I wonder if this was like the early draft of the intro adventure, and then they were like, let's rewrite this, but we'll keep what you have, some good ideas, and we'll keep it small, and then we'll give it out to people. Because I will say, again, we've only started reading the Eve of Ruin book. The first chapter, it does feel a little bit similar to like...
No, it is, and it very much is. And you're completely right. I think it's like, here's the alternate timeline version of it, which is fine, and I like both. And I think if they were doing Dragon Heist now, the Forgotten Tales book that they made is a good example of what that was, because that was written by the same people, all the same people who made the Dragon Heist book, but it was their alternate version of it. But the additional two, because in the main book you can choose all four of the antagonists, but they frame it around more the Xanathar versus Zentarim into rivalry as the backdrop to it all, no matter what you're doing. Whilst this one gave you the more on the Bregendarth and the Castellanters. And so it was like, this is clearly something that was going in the book, but they didn't get time for. And here are alternate ways of starting the adventure and different ways of running the vault, which I think actually if they put that book as one, it would be a super incredible book.
Yeah.
But I think on the Planescape one, they probably had this idea of doing a deeper sigil primer and doing one for like the mortuary, going to the Harmonium prison, going to the Hall of Speakers and stuff, all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
But they thought, we ain't got time for that. We haven't got the budget to make that book. So we've done this one, and it's a good example. And it's a shame because I think more of them would be great. And I would love that they would do more.
Yeah.
If it isn't even for non-printed, like that's such a thing that, would be great.
Well, the other one we haven't mentioned, the other sort of like intro one, which I think is most like the Eldritch Eye one we're talking about today, is Spelljammer Academy one, which was like a little 4-episode one. And it was fine. Yeah, it's not connected at all to the Spelljammer the Lights of Xerxes adventure at all, because you start on that one on the planet and your planet's exploding. You're like, quick, get on to Spelljammer. You're not. Whereas the Spelljammer is like, you are basically Star Trek. You're learning in the academy and stuff.
I would play that as like, here's an opportunity to think of your character at level 1, and I think it's a level 5 starting adventure. I can't, or maybe it isn't. So like, I don't know if it is, or is it a level 1
for Spelljammer?
Yeah.
I'll quickly check because I've got it.
If it starts at level 1, then ignore this. But also, I see it as what's a really good way of like, here's your like backstory for your character when you meet them. If I was, thinking of running it as a proper campaign, maybe I would do the Spelljammer Academy and like get everyone to play their characters, but as if they're level 1 characters 20 years before we're going to meet them again, or 10 years before we meet them again. And so then you could just build this up as like a backstory for your characters. And then in the intervening time, you talk about all the different things you've done that then make you the character you are now at level 5 or whatever it is.
I really like that. Yeah. So yeah, it is levels 1 to 4 throughout the whole thing. Yeah. But I like that because I think that's the problem. Is like we always think, level 1, you start as a fresh face, like adventurer with a big sword and they go out. And then your level 5 is like, it's just 5 years later or whatever. But I like the idea that, it's been 20 years or it's been a longer time, so actually this is like a prequel to what your character is. And I think that's the same with the Vecna ones. So the Eldritch Eye, that's for a lower level group of individuals as well.
Yeah, it is, because Vecna starts at, it says to start at level 10, but obviously gives you options to start at 8 or 9 dependent, and it gives you some actual, for the first adventure, gives you like ways to lower the DC of the difficult rating of the actual thing by reducing some monsters, changing a monster's ability slightly, which is really interesting.
I like that. It's nice to have that, because often you go, okay, you need at least 4 to 6 players and you're going to start at this level, and if you've got 1 or less, it's like, well, up to you. But actually here in this adventure, it gives you examples of like what you can change, like take this person out, or like it tells you some suggestions which you didn't have before. But yeah, the Eldritch Eye is 4 to 6 of level 3, and then at the beginning of the book, I know we're not talking about the Eve of Ruin, but it says like, in the meantime, what have your players been up to? And then it's like, okay, and now off you go on the first quest. That it's sort of like, so I like that idea you were talking about before with the Spelljammer one, that here it's been like, you started off, this is where you started off, and then you got into the service of Dargalt Neverember from this adventure, and then it's been several years, and it's been like, I think it starts like 6 months later, and then I'm like, no, it's definitely like 5 years later, You
could even, like, if you were going for the Spelljammer one, it makes me think of like those movies where it's like, what you did last summer or something like that. Or like, I watched this show recently, which isn't very good, called Class of '09. It's about FBI agents and AI. But the thing that it does in that show is it keeps like going back to the day of the event, and you could run it like, here's one session, we're going to start Spelljammer Academy. Session 2, we're 20 years in the future. Session 3, you go back.
Oh, yeah.
You tell them a bit of what happens, but you kind of allow them to be affected by something. And then you can plot that in. Like, just ask them for something that you think would be interesting, because then it could be something that defined their character, and they slowly learn why they've all got this secret and they never talk about it or something like that, but it's what you're going back for. Like, you were all part of this Vecna ritual that you saw, and you all got something from that. In this initial Vecna one, you go and you get a boon from Vecna.
Yes, you get a charm or something. Yeah,
exactly. So maybe unabridge that a little bit further and make it a bit more like you've all been touched by it, and you all know that you have this feeling, and you all went away. Like, after that event, you all just felt you needed to go leave Neverwinter, and then you suddenly all come back, and the main book starts. And actually, you can try and build your whole 10th level of character based on, this was your first ever outing or one event, and you haven't seen each other for such a long time. and slowly learn. Maybe one of you's is a cultist or was a cultist or something like that.
Yeah, or is now the betrayer of some sort. Like you've really gone deep into the Vecna stuff as a result.
Yeah.
Well, your description of like jumping forward and backwards in time and changing it chronologically, it reminds me of, I never watched it, unfortunately. It is now on the list. It's Kaleidoscope on Netflix.
Good.
Yeah, I was going to say, I assumed you're that person who watched it, but that idea of like a heist show of 8 to 10 episodes, and it would randomize the order for you as the individual Netflix viewer.
Yeah, it was really good.
It says here over 5,000 possible combinations before you reach the final episode, which is wild. I kind of like that as a result. So yeah, again, a lot of work for you as a GM to be like, okay, and now we go back 20 years, and I think maybe you have to structure it out a little bit, but that sounds like a really interesting story thing, and as long as the players are involved in that, I
really enjoyed it, and I felt like the one that I got, and it probably is a proof in the pudding that it all works, is that it actually worked. Apart from the second to last one, was what is the latest chronology was then before the heist, and you didn't learn anything. Because you already because the actual giveaway is in the last episode. Anyway, whatever. It was just kind of the last couple were a bit out of sync for me, but I totally agree. I think it could be a fun thing, and you could, if you were a very experienced GM, really work that to maybe you could go back and forth and be like, you slowly uncover this. The first adventure is a much bigger dungeon crawl. It's a huge, it's actually quite a big dungeon in this. We're not talking about this book necessarily now, but I've started it.
I know, we've done it now.
But the first bit you do goes into quite a mega dungeon. And so you could run that over a few sessions, and you could use that as the first one. And then maybe you come back later after it, say the whole cult goes quiet for a long time or something like this, but you've always got this sensation. And you could keep going back until you find that actually one of you at the end, that one of them maybe did something that they shouldn't have done, or got the eye, or got a hand, or got something like that.
Yeah.
And then you could be like, okay, you found it. And then in the next episode, it's like you're fighting something big.
Yeah.
Pull out the eye now, and you're like, oh my gosh, it links.
I like that idea that if you start off with the Eve of Ruin adventure and you go back, and then there is a betrayer element or something like that really early on, and then you go back and do this nest of Eldritch Eye with that person playing the betrayer character starting off, but then everyone else is playing the original team that they were with, and then they get betrayed. I know it's a bit of highlighting of one character perhaps, but I do think that's quite an interesting one, because the nest of Eldritch Eye, it's very short. I'll be honest. I think overall it's a decent intro to D&D. Like I know we've got starter sets, so we've got the Stormwreck Isle, you got the Dragon Spire ones as well, and obviously Mines of Fandelver. I think this is just you can run this in a 3-hour session. It's just 15-ish rooms. I think an interesting intro to the story, a cool idea of getting into the secret bit with the eye, which I love. I don't know if I'd be smart enough to know about that, but obviously I know if you know Vecna, all stuff about eyes and hands and that sort of thing. This is where I will say, obviously, right off the top, both you and I, we know a little bit about Vecna. We're not super experts. We've not gone back through the vaults of all the stuff like Vecna must die tonight or anything like that. What I will say, I did not realise that Vecna was like the Lord of Secrets, which I know is like a big, his big deal. There's something delicious to me as a GM about using secrets to power in the adventure itself. It talks about secrets and using them to get inspiration or to get roles advantage, etc.
Advantage for a whole minute. Advantage for whispering a secret into the air that no one can hear. And what I like about that is now this is where I'm going to get confused between the two, and I believe this is the first adventure in the Eve of Ruin, is that some of the secrets that people know is that Dagult Neverwinter doesn't have a right to his position.
I know! Yeah. That's such a big... It's drama. It's gossip. I love it.
It's gossip. And you're and it is from, I think a local bard, an actor. So it's such a classic, the actor knows the gossip.
It's little hand gestures hey, guess what? And...
Yeah, exactly. You can imagine it. And so it's a wild one. And you think, but once you've whispered the secret, you and your party have no knowledge of that secret evermore.
No.
Which is great.
I love it.
How you don't know that. You can use this really great information, but you've got to remember now, you do not. And it will come up, and you will have that moment, in the story where you're but we know, but they don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
Our characters don't know. We know.
It's such a cool resource that if you spend it, it's so valuable, but you're do we hold on to it or do we use it for now? So yeah, there's ways to gamify it, I guess. But it's just something about it which is, it's been different to the other sort of mechanical things that they've included in the previous adventures. Like the one I always think of is Strixhaven, which was like the report card, which again, I know it's thematic and stuff like that. And then you had friendships and bonds and like, oh, you could get advantage on the exams. Again, all stuff I really liked, but there's something so simplistic about this where you use the secrets thing. Like again, maybe it's not to everyone's taste, but one thing I would definitely encourage people to do, the players, to be like, think of secrets for your character that you can't put in your backstory. Like maybe you could tell the GM, but they won't, you know, it is up to you, the player, to release them to give you advantage. And you could have maybe up to 3.
Yeah.
And I just, because then it means like, okay, this is important. Like, I've been claiming to be this person, but I'm actually the twin brother or something like that. I don't know. Like, and whatever it is like, it is shattering, but then nobody else knows. I don't know.
You lose that secret as well, which I think is kind of crazy. I was thinking as well, like if you're in a scenario and you're trying to do this like quite dramatically, you could have your Rogue One moment where you know the secret of how to get into the temple and you're all down your luck. Everything's looking really bad. You're fighting Vecna. He's about to take over the world. And you're like, I have no more secret. I know how to leave the chamber. And you just whisper the secret of how to leave. And so you now and your party do not know how to leave. So you're basically sacrificing yourself for the fight just so you can get advantage to do the final hit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That could be such a powerful moment that you could utilize, or one character could do. You know, like, I'm going in and I'm going to whisper a secret now, which means I'm never getting out of here. But Vecna's dying.
I wonder if you want to go a step further for maybe this, if you were streaming this sort of thing. And it's something, because I do it, I've done it recently with Solemn Veil, where I've said, okay, the person that's got the attention of the weird, the sort of big bad, I've gone, all right, everyone else take their headphones off and stand away and don't look at the subtitles of the VOD. And then I can have a one-on-one. I wonder if it's the same thing where you go, okay, you want to release your secret? All right, every player, leave the room or take off your headphones, etc. And then you speak it to the GM. And then no one knows until afterwards when they can go back and watch it, but they don't know of it in the moment.
Yeah, I love it.
I just, again, as a different level of stuff, and, you know, each to each other's choice, but I just like that as a performance, I'd go, oh my God. Shall we talk a little bit about the dossier? Then?
Yeah.
So, ages ago, I think last year, sort of was announced all these sort of books coming out, and then they were sort of like hinted that Vecna was going to be a big deal. And I think it was at the time about Stranger Things, the latest season had come out. And then they sort of put out this dossier about who Vecna was, who is this guy, and like some of the key items or magical things that are associated with him. And it was just like a very simple document, which I thought was really good. It got some beautiful art, I will say. Like, it was the new version of Vecna that it looks, I don't know, it's one of those things where you think, I wonder if a Baldur's Gate artist has gone, I will make you beautiful, and maybe we can fix him. That sort of, because he looks like, again, like a very sort of, a man that was obviously no skin or anything, got beautiful robes. I will say, you can't see its feet. But then this amazing, like, almost like, I don't want to say it's not armor, but you know, like Warple, the sort of like cosplay sort of stuff. It looks like he's just created some sort of like World of Warcraft armor. And then the worst bit of it, and I didn't realize this, and I don't know if this has always been the case, his Book of Vile Darkness, it's in his
chest cavity.
It's in his ribcage. The concept art, certainly in the Vecna Dossier, looks like this was the first time we've seen like an updated version of sort of Vecna. It's great. It's scary looking,
but it's imposing, and it's a really great piece of art. I love it. It hasn't changed since the Dossier, but it is a really good way. And that gold brass armor that sort of floats around him. Yeah, very, very cool.
It's very cool.
The Dossier is great, though, and it mirrors both books by the introduction to who Vecna is and the relationship he has to Kaz, which is someone that I haven't come across until I'd read these. A fallen paladin who rose through the ranks of Vecna's vile minions, become his sort of right-hand person, and together dominated many different realms. The thing that kind of like gives this tragedy to the whole story is that Vecna forged him this sword, the sword of Cass, and this sword was an intelligence that one could argue is also the intelligence out there, the dark ether, the dark god that spoke to Vecna and gave him all these bad ideas. There's now gave Cass the idea of killing the archlich, and there's thoughts and beliefs in it that say maybe the dark gods were worried about how much power they'd imbued into Vecna, and so that was the reason they did it. And that leads to this sort of like Cass being, injuring Vecna really badly to the near death, and sending Cass through the multiverse. I love this flinging through the multiverse. It's very much Which is like one of my favorite things from Fizban's was the Tiamat's fling through Avernus
Yes,
ability.
yeah.
She just picks you up and chucks you through dimensions, and you fly through the 9 layers of hell, every single one, before you come back taking like D100 damage.
Ridiculous,
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
you
like,
see all of hell before you die.
cool.
It's so cool. But it's such an interesting story. Again, I'm sure we'll go into it in more detail when we come to the full adventure. Because again, I agree. I'd heard of Cass briefly, and I'd heard of this sort of story about this sort of, again, almost like individuals. You think like the one that comes to mind is like Elrond and Isildur, like destroy the ring, and then they're like, I can imagine them just going to a big fight and then killing each other, or Anakin versus Obi-Wan, you know, that sort of two people who are clearly good friends and have a very strong relationship, however you wish to play that, and then this idea of evil, both to Vecna, like you said, this voice that sort of encourages him to, you know, write all the horrible stuff in the Book of Vile Darkness, take over these places, go, why don't you become a lich, all that sort of thing, and then forging this evil sword, giving it to Cass going, no, I can't trust Vecna, and then there's just this turning against each other. It's just so interesting.
It really is.
Again, you could play it in any way. You could, you know, gender and sex and stuff, you could change all that stuff if you would like to. Like, I just think it's such a strong, interesting story that you as adventurers getting caught up in these small cogs. I can understand why they've brought Vecna back for the 50th, because it's such a, I think it's just an interesting, very simple, straightforward story that's scary. And this idea that now you have these two artifacts in the world, which are, you know, are shown in so many different adventures, like the Eye of Vecna and the Hand of Vecna, which I will say, a little bit squeamish if you're like, how do I use these items? That's right, I pull out my own eye, stick in this eye, cut off my hand, put in that hand, you know.
Yeah, and if you remove either of them, you die.
Yeah, it's like this is a one or nothing. This is, Baldur's Gate, are you sure you want to do that? Or do you want to save beforehand? What I will say in the dossier, again, I know we can go into a little bit more detail if we need to, but I liked how if you have one item, so like the eye, you had something. If you had the hand, it's something, but then you combine them, it stacks, and there's some things like that. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. Like having, I mean, I'm sure there are other like items of armors. I know the Rod of Seven Parts comes to be big in the adventure as well, but I like the idea of like opening up and having like an item that has additional things because you've got more of it. And I like the fact this is just two parts. There's not loads of parts. It's just like the eye is scary, the hand is scary, but together you're going to be unstoppable.
I do also like, though, when you have both of them, you have a 1 in 20 chance whenever you use them to become Vecna.
Yeah.
Which is just like, oh, fuck. It's not that simple. So, you know, but they are really great. And you're right. The whole hideousness of it, the sort of vileness of it is thematic and fits so well with it, doesn't it? The fact that you have to rip out your eye, you have to chop your hand off. Going back on your original point as well, like as a 50th anniversary choice, it seems like the right choice. And looking through the adventure for the main one, Eva Ruin, the fact that it seems a bit like a greatest hits moment, isn't it, in there? Because the adventure is doing the sort of like, well, when I say the greatest hits, I also mean one of my worst, most hated places I have to go. You get to go back to the Death House. Yay! Are we so happy? Yay. But you get to travel to Spelljammer,
the
Underdark, Sigil, Eberron as well. That's it.
Yeah. Earth as well.
Kryn. You go to Kryn. We've said Barovia.
Avernus.
Yes, to see Tiamat as well. You go to Pandesmos, which is in Pandemonium as well. So you get a good load of the key highlights of D&D for the last 50 years in this one book. We're all surrounded by its most famous baddie.
The only thing I would say with the dossier, now, one thing we discovered whilst trying to research this is that it has been taken away from D&D Beyond, like fully. Like you can possibly still get it if you search for it, but basically now that the Eve of Ruin has come out, we're discussing this. We think that maybe it's just been taken out, and maybe some of the items have changed. You know,
they've just kept now. All you get in the dossier now is you get the Vecna intro. And you get his stat block, and that is it. There's nothing else.
Yeah, nothing about the sword.
You don't get the Book of Vile Darkness or anything like that. It's just those two things. There's nothing about the sword and the eye and the hand, because I assume they are now in the book, in the Eve of Ruin book. So just don't want to
give it all away, which I do think is a shame, because I mean, when I read about the Book of Vile Darkness, because we've talked about it before, because you had the PDF of the book,
third edition version,
and it's very grim. I will say, like, I like the idea of it, because it talks about like this: the contents of this foul manuscript of ineffable wickedness are the meat and drink of those in evil's thrall. No mortal was meant to know the secrets of it, what it contains, knowledge so horrid that even to glimpse the scroll pages invites madness. And what I like about it, certainly from what we managed to piece together, it's an artifact, it's a wondrous item, but you can do random properties to it. So in the DM's guide, you've got minor and major beneficial properties, and then minor and major detrimental properties. And I quite like that. Like, ultimately, if you look at it, it's like 3 minor beneficial, 1 major beneficial, 3 minor detrimental, and 2 major detrimental. So on balance, it's not great. I like that each individual item is going to be unique to your group as well. Like there's other things in there, like you can get like adjusted ability scores and all that sort of thing. Mark of Madness, which I will say a little bit tricky, because it says that after you spend the amount of time reading and studying the book, you require a physical disfigurement as a hideous sign of your devotion. Probably wouldn't call it a disfigurement, but other than that, like an evil ruin might appear on your face, your eyes may become glossy black, horns might sprout from your forehead, or you might become wizened and hideous, losing all facial features, gain a forked tongue, or some other feature the DM chooses. I mean, I would be the DM that chooses it. I'd say, what do you think it looks like,
I totally agree. You'd get your players to choose how they adapt and manifest this evil, which I think is great. I do love that there is one way to destroy this book, which is when all evil in the multiverse is wiped out, the book turns to dust and is forever destroyed. Okay.
No biggie.
Just a minor quest line there, minor fetch quest. That's it. Yeah, quickly done.
That's like the major one. But like if you get a solar to tear the book in two, it's destroyed for D100 years, after which it reforms. Yeah. So I like the idea that there is these angels and solars searching for it, and maybe there's a competition to find it, and you get some reward, and So I do like with this and with the hand and the eye and stuff. There are ways to destroy it, but it's so brutal. It's like it's such a risk. And how do you feel about this? Like, I love having lots of detail for the GMs to be like, oh, this is a really cool item. But like in Call of Cthulhu or any of these, as soon as you get stats or anything like this to a creature, it becomes less scary because it can be defeated. Do you think like we should have ways to know how to destroy these artifacts?
I think so, because the particular one I like in this is there's also the creature tunes this book for 100 years. If they unearth a phrase hidden in the original text that, when translated into Celestial and spoken aloud, destroys both the speaker and the book in a blinding flash of radiance. And however, as long as evil exists in the multiverse, the book will reform in D10 times 100 years. Now, if you want a prologue to your story, that is it. Do you know what I mean? You could have a character, like just have this person who just, introducing the story, and you say like, you could just give a little narration just to get everyone into the setting of it. And you have this person who's like fell to ruin, followed evil ways, and then slowly realized the damage and the corruption that had been befallen them from it. And they take this book and they find this hidden passage, and it preys on their mind even for maybe another 100 years. And they take it to the top of a mountain, and it's galing, and it's windswept, and they just go, one last fuck you to a Vecna, and they just read this word out in the thing, and slowly as their body blindly flashes and burns up. And like the book burn, and they scream into the air, and you hear Vecna's cry across the multiverse. And there was a winter that lasted the lands for a decade, or something like that, and all that sort of shit. You roll the D100 times 100 years. You just roll a random number, and you go like 685 years later on that same mount. Born is your betrayer. You know what I mean? The person who betrays you, and there they were born. And then maybe they're an embodiment of the Book of Vile Darkness, you know what I mean? Like, and that's it. And they've got it inside their chest cavity, and like they don't quite know it. And it could be like Dark Urge. Like they've got these, and you could have them have this rule where they have to like roll for why they're doing bad things, that they're evil sometimes. And then that's and you get a player that's on board with it, but you don't tell them quite what it is. And then you kind of, when they meet Vecna, he pushes his hand into their chest and rips out the book and is like, I'll have that back, thank you. And then they kind of crumple onto the floor like, and you're like, what an intro, right?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, I like the idea of saying, yes, finally, a return. Just like
yeah, exactly. And that's like the first, you don't tell them why until that moment. And you're like, I have a book inside my chest.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like the idea that, if you were planning with the DM and you're like, look, I'm willing to go this far. Yeah, like you said, with consensus.
Obviously, you get them to, but you kind of want to give a little. You say, look, hey, there's going to be there's something about you that means you're slightly evil. You don't know why. I don't want to tell you for the reveal, but there'll be some body horror. But you will be all right at some point. It just will be a really cool moment. Or you could tell them, and they could be in on it. But I think at least for the rest of the players in the room, we're just like, the fuck, you had the fucking book inside you, what are you doing?
It was you. Yeah, exactly. But then having the ability for that betrayer to then redeem themselves in some way, I don't know, because they've been changed by the good of the players, you know.
They aren't evil, but they keep doing the evil, and then the book is taken out, and that's when
could change their alignment and all that
exactly
sort of thing.
I don't know.
Ooh, I like that. Two things I want to mention about the adventure itself, because like the nest of the Eldritch Eye, again, very straightforward. We've got like a quick intro, basically, like sort of like all the different things, enough to keep people interested, I guess. I want to just talk about the map and how beautiful it is and how colourful it is compared to some of the other maps we've seen. It's done by a guy called Marco Bernardini.
We've had do the mortuary ones.
I was going to ask, because I've recognised the colour, and I was trying to look through the other starter things, and I had to look at Fortune's Wheel and stuff like that, and it's not as nice and bright. Like, you've got these beautiful greens and oranges that just, again, make me think of, like, oh yeah, we're definitely underground. And it just feels very detailed and very beautiful for a starter adventure map. And certainly, like, the final room, you have this sort of incredibly luminous sigil that is a circle and all that sort of thing, where clearly this ritual is happening. Minor spoiler for the end of this adventure. But I was like, oh my God, it's actually a really beautiful piece of art. And it's one of those things where I'm normally, when I see maps, I'm like, right, I'll redraw it out so they don't see it. I'd actually think I would definitely use this on a VTT, because I just think it's such a stunning, and they've got player versions as well, but
No, I agree, and I think the ones that they did for the mortuary ones were equally stunning as well. Lots of art, colours, lots of underlays, details. Yeah, no, a lot of work has gone into making these really thematic and like give you a real sense of what's going on. What's great is like even in that room where the ritual's going on, you've got a cool rune and it's kind of got things splaying out. Yeah, no, really, nice and colourful, not just like the Dragonlance ones. They had some of the best like big maps, but some of the most dull,
smaller maps.
Close maps,
because it had lots of smaller, like, oh, quick, we've got 8 rooms, which we talked about before. Like, I don't mind having an 8-room dungeon. It's like, oh, great, we're not here for that longer. But there's just something about this one where I was looking at it and I was like, it's not fully crammed in here. It's clearly big enough, like, for you to wander in and take your time about it. But also, you're not going to be stuck here and be like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, there's always something to do. Like, even though there's only one way in and out of, like, the lower chamber, but you have the key to get in. So you're not like, oh, is there a puzzle or anything like that? I mean, there is a small puzzle to help, like, as an optional side quest, because ultimately you could be like, nope, boo, 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 kill zombies, kill this, and go straight through. But there's like a ghost which asks for help and stuff like that. I think that's in this one. Yeah, the Tomb of the Mage and the Tomb of the Knight, which I think is quite nice.
I thought that's a great little go in. You find out a little bit of information about the knight. You then know that you can then go back and get some further information out of them. Really kind of cool. And then it's about like giving them rest as well. And it's really interesting. I enjoy it. And there's enough of different people in there that you're happy. Like there's a couple of zombies, there's some invaders that were in there as well. And then once you go through this doorway, this port, and you get through into the second area, you find the crypt of the silence seal.
I know.
8 zombies shamble around in a crypt and they're hungry and immediately attack you. Like, great. And there's a shrine to Ogma here and you're like, okay, wow.
I'll get that. Yeah, exactly. The whole of the Whispered One. Like, again, I think there's just some nice, simple naming. So, the Crypt of the Silent Singers. I was like, ooh, I love that as a name.
Yeah. And I love the cultists being actually, like, quite scared.
Yeah.
They're hostile but easily cowed. So if you do, like, a DC 12 intimidation check, they will just like surrender. You're like, I love it. That's kind of quite funny.
I think you would, because obviously in the final ritual chamber, you have the cult leader pretty much slaying people to give power and stuff like that. Yeah, it's like really, when you come in, obviously they're in the middle of a ritual and he says like, now release your secrets unto me. Let the truths hidden in your souls come forth and become stronger. And then, in response, the cultist silhouettes warp into 2 lanky entities, shadowy entities. Like, I'm like, oh my God, that is horrific. That's scary.
Yeah. And the ending's great as well, because it's like you screw up. Well, Zalra basically mucks up because you destroy them. But Vecna turns up and goes, well, this guy is a bit of a disappointment, but hey, you guys look interesting. Take some powers.
Take these charms, the charm of the creeping hand and the charm of the Eldritch Eye. And it says like you get the players to roll, and odds you get the Eldritch Eye, and evens you get the hand as well, which is fine. I would say I think just because I like odd numbers, I would like a third option, but I know it's like, you got an eye or a hand. That's kind of Vecna's deal.
You could have like a book of secrets or something like that.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just think that odd numbers, ones of three, just to keep it interesting. Because otherwise, if you got a group of like 5 players, I just want a bit more variety in these things. But the decent charms as well. Like the creeping hand is once per turn. When you hit a creature with an attack roll using a weapon or an armed strike, you can infuse your strike with life-stealing energy. Your attack deals an extra 1d10 necrotic damage, and you gain 5 temporary hit points. Once used 5 times, it vanishes. And the Eldritch Eye is that you can class clairvoyance as an action without a spell slot or requiring no...
I'm not a fan of clairvoyance. I don't think it's...
It's all right. Again, it's not as good as creeping hand, is it? Like,
no,
at that lower level.
If I was going to do this like back and forth sort of thing, or I was going to make it a bit more like, here's this, and then we're going to cut to 10 years later, I'd make it greater. Like you get one wish.
Whoa.
Yeah, no, but like, I think that's what you get to learn 5 secrets.
I was going to say something on the secret thing, or like you can see through, like, I don't know, you get like an advantage on insight when someone tells you, there's secrets around.
Secrets that would give you a morally grey perspective,
yes,
right?
100%.
And it's like you can make a decision on, and then that's what you say you've been doing for the last 10 years is, what did you do with your secrets? And you're all given the opportunity to whisper them. If you whisper all 5 secrets and let them vanish into air and do nothing with them, then you get a wish. Right? That would be that's what I do. So it's kind of like you can either utilize the secrets to go and deal with what they are, because they're secrets that deal with bad things happening or something like that. Like, and so, do you know what I mean? So you've got this moral imperative to either do something about it, or you can spend those secrets and get yourselves a little prize.
Yeah.
And like, give your players a little choice of like, what do I do with them? Do you go and save the people that need helping? And maybe one of them's like, something bad's about to happen to someone who's pretty bad. You know what I mean? And so you kind of can make the decision there as to, do you save them? Do you not? Or do you just, I don't know, something bad's about to happen to someone you really hate, but it's still a bad thing to happen to them and you don't hate them that much. But then maybe you go, but I could spend that secret to gain a boon. And then maybe your character does do that, and maybe that's racked with guilt with it or something like that. And that could be something to add to their backstories. I don't know.
The only thing I was going to add to this is that, again, maybe it's because it's made for new DMs and new players, but I would like to add like a minor detrimental property to each charm.
Yeah.
Like have because I love that idea that, with the things, but I think like these are dangerous things. Like, because otherwise I'd be like, I'm going to use my charm of creeping hand. That's going to boom, boom, boom. And once you use it 5 times, the charm vanishes. But I do want like some sort of, I don't know, detrimental, a minor one for this.
Or maybe if you do use them all 5 times, you can't level up one level. Your max level is 19 or something like that. Or like,
I love that.
You know
I mean, like, I love. We talked about this in one of the DM's book clubs, travel book clubs recently, about like get sapped of a level, and he's like, I'll just spend it now.
You have to roll hit points for level with disadvantage for the rest of the game.
Oh, but I don't like that at all. But yes,
But you know what I mean? Like, as in, like, you've used it. You took the secrets, and now you were cursed by it. And like, maybe you can be, it's a curse, so maybe you could be uncursed by like remove curse. But those hit points have stayed. Do you know what I mean? Where you mark them down, and I think that would be kind of a fun thing. Or like, the curse is only broken when you've destroyed Vecna. I think what you want to do is you want to bring the stakes to this one, don't you? Because you're playing level 10, start out in the main adventure. And I feel I don't actually think this is a starter adventure. I don't think this is something you're going to bring new players or DMs to. I think this is one where you're going to be more experienced. You want to be, if you're going to be particularly coming in at level 10, you probably have done something to get you there, is what it always implies. So I think with that, you want to up the stakes. And I think doing evil crap like that is where things are going to sort of set the tone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And be like, this isn't going to be a little walk in the park. You're going to the freaking death house, by the way. It's going to be freaking awful. You're going to hate it. Okay? Like, physically, mentally, and in reality, and in the game.
I love how you absolutely hate the death house, and I really love it. Because, again, I've never played through it.
Oh, yeah. As a GM, you're going to be like, this is so much fun. As a player, you're just like, burn it all.
I think burn it all, but also I do think with the Death House is that not much happens, and then you've got 3 layers, and then you've got a final layer underneath.
Yeah.
It's like, it does take a little while to go through, and you're constantly like going, what is it? What is there stuff here? And then Yeah, so I definitely feel that. Whereas I feel more comfortable running this. Like, I know I can finish this in one session. Whereas the Death House, I think the least amount of time it took was like 3 sessions, because people were like, there must be something here, and I'm just saying, like, just get to the top of the house already.
That's the thing, because the problem is that it's so building you up to something big, and you kind of guess it as you're going, but you don't really get the payoff. You don't get the payoff you deserve for the effort you put in, and all you know is at the end, it's like when you get to the top, and it's like, now it's fucking Death Trap, and you're like, well, fucking surprise, everybody. If anyone listened to me fucking 4 sessions ago, we wouldn't be in this situation, but fine. All we've gained is a creepy doll and some really horrible lore, and now we're going to go fight something evil in the basement. Great.
Worst things worse, even if you manage to get out or burn down the house or whatever, it reforms because it's part of Barovia, so it's always there.
And it makes no difference, and it doesn't matter, and it's not important to the story even. Like, it doesn't even come up again, really.
There is another adventure, like a quick start adventure that's come out for the Infinite Staircase.
That's right, yeah.
Which is the Lost Caverns of Solkath, I want to say. Again, there's lots of silent letters in it, and it basically, with the Infinite Staircase, it's very much like the Tales from the Yawning Portal. Yeah, where they've redone and rebrought stuff up, which is great. I don't mind that so much. I will say what I don't like about that adventure, at some point we can look through it, but it's only half the adventure. As soon as you go to the big fight at the end, you go down some stairs, it goes, and that's all for now. If you want the end of the adventure, you have to... I know, I don't like that at all. I think that's...
What are you doing?
Ultimately, why would you buy that book? You know, if you've got it from a previous edition, you could update it. Ultimately, it is easy to update things to 5th edition. It just takes a bit of time. But I did feel a bit like, that's a bit shitty.
That's shitty.
Give us a full adventure. Like, you've given us the full Prisoner 13, you've given us full chapters of stuff. Don't cop out and be like, and you're about to go down and fight whatever the BBG is.
You can find her stats, though, if you've got Witchlight, can't you? But
yes, because it's all to do with Tasha. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's like, don't get me wrong. When I read it through, I was like, oh, this is actually a really interesting adventure. Like, I very old school D&D. And then, it's as soon as you go to fight Tasha or whatever incarnation of Tasha it is, it's not there.
She turns up in the Eve of Ruin, though, doesn't she?
She does. She turns up with a whole gang of people. Again, it's like greatest hits of D&D.
It really is Adventure's endgame.
It's so fascinating, like, because obviously superheroes and all that sort of thing, and multiverse stuff has always been around for, I think, the last 10 years, it feels like. And then suddenly D&D's gone, hey,
we've got one of those.
What if we do Planescape again? Hey, what about we do Spelljammer? Hey, what if we bring Vecna and you can go between... again, I have no problem with it. It just feels like, when like media is catching up with us.
Well, it's cyclical, isn't it? Because all those comic books are based on, well, no, like, to a certain extent, there's a lot of, like, people who make comic book movies are basically D&D adventures, aren't they, to a certain extent? Like, I mean, the 10 Rings is 100% a D&D adventure. So, like, it's what it is. They're speaking to one another. I thought what's interesting is a lot of shit gets lost in D&D, right? You got the Lost Mine of Fandelver, you got the Lost Laboratory of Qualish, and you got the Lost Caverns of Socknet. I mean, people keep... I think there's a lot of absent-mindedness going on in the world of D&D.
You think you need to do, like, a find and replace and be, like, a forgotten?
Well, it's the Forgotten Realms, for crying out loud.
I'd have to be less good if it was, like, the known Laboratory of Qualish, Yeah,
I know.
The familiar version of... the
familiar... The
familiar minds of Fandelver. Just turn everything, it's like, oh, it's lost, ancient. It's like, no, brand new, sparkling. Like,
I think Descent in the ever-present caverns of Toshneth is right, isn't it?
Yeah, I think overall, I'm excited to properly delve into the actual adventure stuff. Like, I feel like these little resources, like, again, they're free, easy to look up, good artwork. I think straightforward and simple, easy to run as a new DM and with players and stuff like that. And it's enough to get you excited. Like, you've got the setting, you've got Neverwinter, you've got a mission, A to B, and a bit of flavor around as well. And again, I just looking at this map as well from Marco, I just like, beautiful. Yeah. Like, the texture of it is really good, and I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely would use this one rather than drawing out my own.
Oh yeah, exactly. And talking of art, when I flick through the Eve of Ruin, there are some really cool, what they call the death, what are those, the machines they make in Avernus?
Infernal machines?
Infernal machines, yeah. They've got this cool one called the Venatrix, right?
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's so cool. And you find this Infernal War Machine Venatrix, which is like a 3-wheeled straight out the back end of Mad Max Beast of a Machine. It's so cool. It's got a demon, a devil riding on the back of it with a huge harpoon with some cool like punk person driving it. It looks incredible, and I'm like, I'm so down for that. I'll try and show you the picture now.
Oh my god, yeah, that like almost like it feels like the sort of newish Batmobile with more spikes.
So it's very, very, very cool. I think it's going to be really good. I'm really looking forward to getting more into it.
As always, we find, and I guess because we're both like, we love D&D, we love role-playing games, and we go for it, and sometimes we're like, we really enjoyed it, but we didn't like X, Y, Z, that, you know, count off our fingers, and that's good. I think it's always good about critiquing these sort of things and being like, how would we change it? So that's I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I've heard mixed reviews, which I would expect, because again, from what we know from Wizards in the last year and a bit, things have not gone their way. You know, OGL, laying off people before Christmas, you know, AI art.
Yeah. So, tick, 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 all those things.
It's one of those things where I am now a little bit like, with the releases this year, we've got the Eve of Ruin, we've got the Infinite Staircase, and then we've got all the new sort of players' handbooks and stuff like that. Yeah. I am a little bit like, are we going to have a company of board directors going, we need to make sure we have all this stuff in so that all the old fans come back and spend their money and all that sort of thing, rather than anything new. So that's the only thing I'm a little bit concerned about.
I kind of think it's fine for the 50th anniversary. I kind of am all right with that. If you're doing your 50th year, I think doing the greatest hits then is fine. So long as we come back next year with some new stuff.
I hope so.
I was thinking about it like adventure-wise. The Planescape Adventure, we did a lot of rewriting on that, if you remember.
We did, but we enjoyed it because it was a really good box set compared to Spelljammer. I think we like this. There's potential here. With the Spelljammer one, we were like, there's stuff here, but where's all the other stuff we looked at?
Yeah, you know? Exactly. What I would love to see, we're talking about this like in the following year, is we've set up these other settings. I think it'd be really good to see in the next at least 2 years after this of a follow-up adventure to at least Spelljammer and at least Planescape. I think it would be wild not to. And it seems that they're inputting it into these other ones, like they did with the Fandelver's got a second story, as well as
Shattered Opolis,
the Waterdeep Dragon Heist having Waterdeep, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage. I feel like that would be a good time to get used, like ease themselves back into doing stuff, but also a really good new thing. Like, we're getting the new books. We're getting new Player's Handbook, new Deep Dungeon Master's Guide. We're going to get Monster Manual or whatever they're going to call it. I think that this is either the time to solidify and consolidate what the Forgotten Realms is and own it, or start afresh with something new. Say, here's a brand new setting, rethought of with contemporary ideas and a much bigger cast of people making it, and we're gonna make a Dungeons and Dragons for the 21st millennium finally. Do you know what I mean? Like all this new era of D&D that it just, I think, could be really exciting. I think this is the opportunity to do that, because the Forgotten Realms is very dated, and I think that would be something exciting to see, really.
I'm just thinking about what we've had recently. Obviously, we've had stuff about the Feywild we don't have a Feywild source book or anything like that, because we obviously Domains of Delight. We've gone back and we've done like Domains of Dread as a source book. Eberron had its own source book,
which was the closest we got, I guess. Really.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's tricky, because then we've got source books on like Ravnica and all that sort of thing. So there's certain like and obviously we've got third party stuff, like
MTG.
Role.
That's an MTG one, isn't it? And I think it'd be nice to have, like, Eberron was very close. Maybe even if it is taking Planescape and saying like, this one is actually this is a really great setting. What I love about Planescape is it's so unique. It's so not like any other. It's its own special example of fantasy. I think I'd be really pleased to see Wizards going, all right, this is fantasy for the 2020s. Do you know what I mean? This is what fantasy means now. And I don't know how that manifests. I don't know how they would do that. But if anyone's going to do it and has the opportunity to do it with all the money they've got and stuff like that, and the writers and access to writers they get, could be pretty cool.
I'm looking now because we had like Theros and Strixhaven, but they were all Magic the Gathering settings. Which, I mean, I enjoyed them, but again, they're very much like specific. Like the Book of Many Things, we loved, and that was like, here are lots of locations and stuff like that. And it just was interesting because that is again, I was talking to someone the other day about it and saying that, well, why would I need a book of many things? I was like, oh, well, you don't. You don't at all. But it's one of the best written things we've had in such a long time.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I do think it's interesting. I wonder if they are going to be like, we don't need to keep pumping out adventures, because they've been pumping out a lot of content recently. But do we need to have more? Like the Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, do we need like an expansion on like the different settings that they show in there? Because they're great. I really loved them.
There you go. Great one.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where they will go next. And at some point, I'm sure there'll be another D&D Direct or, whatever it's called. I look forward to a new setting with, different voices and stuff, not the sort of the old crew. But we'll see. Again, I wonder if the move that Hasbro will do, has changed it so we're like, you have to focus on what makes money, Yeah,
so. And I think the other thing is, with the multiverse, what you do with that is you lock yourself into things you can't get away from. So, like, because of the multiverse, there is always a sigil. There is always a spelljammer, no matter what setting you're in. You always can get to that because that's the things behind the reality, or the bits between the reality. There's something kind of fundamentally a bit broken about that because you can't really reset unless they say, well, there's no Planescape. This world is not part of this world, but it always will be because of the nature of Planescape and Spelljammer. So I don't know if they lean into that a bit and they suggest that they take something on that, or they just go and make. I don't know. I just don't see why Eberron was an interesting new look at it, but it's very dated. It's very of its time now, in the sense of like it's the anime inspired.
Would you get, for example, a refresh of Kryn? Because we've got Dragonlance that's come out. We've also got loads of third party guidance. I know, but that's what I'm saying because that's what I'm saying. It's like we've got sort of third party content, like Humblewood has gone down there. MCDM is on there. Now, yeah. We've got Tomb of Beasts, which is Cobalt Press. Dungeons,
Layers of Etherish.
The Grim Drakanen Hem. Layers. Yeah, so they're doing their best to be like, hey, these things have done really well as third party. We're going to put them on here. So I wonder if we're going to see more collaborations with stuff. But I just would like a new setting and just see where they go with it and see what it takes to it. But I do wonder if they're like, do they want to have a refresh of, I don't know, Dark Sun? I don't think you do. Hollow World, or Mystra, that those older settings. Do they want to bring them back and update them for the 5th edition? And I hope, I understand why they might do that, but I also hope that they just go and try something new and just hope for the best.
I hope they do something new. But the other thing that worries me about that thought is if you've seen the new covers and the new cover design, it's very similar. And like Ramona, I saw he's an artist on Twitter who lives locally. She was saying, "Can we get a new font, please?" And I'm like, "Yes, could we get a new font, please?" Because it's fine for 2005. Could we now like? The quality of art and covers that are going on in the world right now. Johan Noor just posted like my 4 favorite TTRPG covers, and I was looking at them and I was like, these are fucking beautiful. The new one from Soul Muppets,
Paint the Town Red. Paint
the Town Red, which is the Noor one, which is beautiful, but then also like all the stuff that Melsonian Arts Count are doing.
Troika,
and all that stuff. And you just come, and then D&D turns up with its very dated sort of like graphical package.
I wonder, again, this is just a thought that I had, because obviously they've got the alt covers as well. And it's almost like, again, I hate using Harry Potter as an example, but when the Harry Potter books first came out, obviously they were aimed at kids and a growing audience of that. And then a couple of years later, we've redone it in slightly more sort of like adult-friendly covers. And it's just, I wonder if that D&D branding of like, hey, that's a D&D book because of the font, etc. But I like the idea that the alt covers are now like, oh, for you, the connoisseur, the coffee table book. Like I have my Eve of Ruin alt cover. It's bloody gorgeous. I would be like, look at this, guys.
Keep the D&D logo, but do we need this Nodesto font? I think is what it's called. That's the name of the font.
I hate fonts.
I just don't want that font anymore. And the artwork they've done looks so gorgeous. It's like just then chucks on this very bland.
They've got the new, I think it's the Player's Handbook, which is done by the same designer who did the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. That very beautiful sort of like muted colours with a gold dragon on it. And I'm just there like,
Mordenkainen volume alt cover was that beautiful white background with those beautiful hand drawing circular, and you're like, that was like an art book. And I'm looking at the Planescape one. The Planescape, it's so cool. It's got so
you love the Eldritch, don't you? So,
but they're just looking at the I've got the edge of the spine up there, and it's just this really hard Soviet style writing, which looks really cool on the edge. And then I've got my player's handbook next to it. You're like, oh, it's so dull. Next to like Vaesen, even the One Ring, even like the Warhammer Fantasy role playing.
Because it's one of those things where, like, when I read through RPGs and stuff like that, I'm looking at the accessibility. I'm looking at like, oh, what does it look like as a PDF, etc. But if you have the physical copy, if you give it to someone, it's an art piece. People want to go, oh, and then read into it and go, oh, I really enjoy this. So it's again, it's another way to get people into the game, having it look good and be good. So it's a completely thing which is beyond my realm as someone who doesn't really do art or anything like that. But I very much appreciate the amount of effort that must go into not only just the cover art, but the actual interior art pieces themselves, like even the graphic design of like what the paper looks like.
I'm not saying any like disrespect against any of the graphic designers or the artists in it. I just think this is clearly something coming from above in a marketing, like, let's not change, ain't broke, don't fix it. And you're like, yeah, but like when you go back to like 3rd edition and 4th edition of D&D, and like 3rd edition used to have these huge tome-like designs, which look so cool. And you're
the player's handbook looks like an actual book. Yeah.
I mean, it's very of its time, and this is very much of its time, 5th edition. We're not there anymore. Let's move on. Okay? Time for a change.
I love that. What a great ending. Like, move on. Move on. Keep Vecna, move on. Thank you, Hamilton, so much. Do you want to do any quick plugs for what you're up to? Anything people should be looking out for in the upcoming months?
Still, it will have probably finished by the time this comes out, but Adventures in Mordheim series is up and out on my YouTube channel, which is Fueled by Chaos, where Fiona here plays a witch hunter with their vassal noble lord Edric von Bevenberg the Fourth, the Count of the March and the West, and all this stuff.
I was going to say, you know more of the title than Taylor does, which is brilliant.
Yeah, you can tell when she brings it up.
You see her eyes go to one side.
And her eyes go to read this huge list.
I mean, I don't blame her either. That's what I would do. That's why I call her character Edric, because I'm like, I'm not calling you anything.
That's it. Yeah. Other than that, that's about it really. I'm just doing stuff on my YouTube channel, and that's it. And Kickstarter is it's in that horrible, everything's very much near the end phase of like getting things out. So that's but there's updates for that. What about yourself? Who, what, when, where?
Oh, very good.
I haven't done this in such a long time.
No, I was like, oh, where are we going? So my name is Fiona. That's the who. The what? When? I know. I'm a person. I'm an improviser most of the time. I've done a lot of role-playing streams that have gone out, and if you follow up various...
Busy.
I've been very busy.
So busy.
It's been fun. I've been really enjoying that. I also do What Am I Rolling, which is a twice-monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast, hence the where question there. We've been doing lots of interviews with game designers, as it's kind of obvious if you've watched the streams and stuff like that that I have moved countries, which has been consonants even. Yes, absolutely. I just got an email just now saying my stuff will be delivered in the next week, so I'm looking forward to having all my RPGs back, which is exciting. But yeah, in the meantime, I've just been trying to do some editing, getting on with that sort of stuff. I've been doing some Too Long Didn't Read Tabletops RPG streams, in which where I spend an hour or two being accountable and reading some RPG stuff, because I do have way too many of them, and I keep buying them
and not reading them.
It's a way to get, that's an interesting thing, and looking at accessibility, etc. So if you fancy that, those are going to be on the where_podcast YouTube, Twitch channels, and at some point, my big aim at some point this year is to get maybe a little Patreon started, maybe get ads on these bloody podcasts, just to give us a little bit of money, just to help us with like hosting and stuff like that, and
that's a really good idea.
So that is the plan. Other little bits and pieces are going on, I'm sure, but the big news, I guess, is that I am going to Gen Con, which is very exciting. I know.
When's that?
That is beginning of August, the first weekend in August, essentially. But I will be helping Rowan, Rook and Dakar, so helping sell their stuff, but also running some games for them as well. I don't know if it's all been announced yet. But
Gen Con, look at you.
Little bit of that. We'll see. I mean, I've worked out my accommodation. I've got my tickets.
Where is it?
It's in Indianapolis, so it's
it's not too.
It's not too far from where I am, but I do have to work out how I'm going to get there because I currently can't drive there. So we'll figure.
Better learn how to drive quick, Fiona.
There's also planes. But again, yeah, it's something. Oh, no trains. What are you talking about? It's the middle of the Midwest.
They don't. I forget. Like America's train network is atrocious. It's wild.
Maybe if I could be like a piece of cargo, maybe I'll get there in time, but I might have to take the long journey around. I don't know.
Bus, Greyhound.
There are Greyhounds and stuff like that. So yeah, so anyway, that's a problem for later, Fiona. Don't worry about that. But yes, I'll be there.
Cool. So people going to Gen Con, please go say hello to Fiona at the Rowan Rook and Descartes.
I was going to say, yeah, come to the stall, buy a book, and then from me, and then I could, and then maybe we'll talk about because they'll have stuff like Eat the Reich will obviously be out fully. There'll be various one-page one-shots. The Hollows obviously is their current big thing. There'll be like Die the RPG. Yeah, there's loads of stuff out there. Which so come along and check that out if you're there.
Nice.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm just pottering along, getting my feet under the RPG table and thinking like, right, what game can I run next? You know, so
amazing.
With all that out of the way, there's nothing left to say, is there, Hamilton?
No, but see you on the flip side.